by fault and thermal alarm indicator lights. Speed potentiometer right here, so if you're in hand, you can adjust the speed locally. You'll be able to see it right there. And then start, stop, and reset push buttons. And there's a drive disable push button, which is like an e-stop. Okay, polymer mixing pump control panel. You have a power disconnect, handoff auto selector switch, run indication light, off indication light, reset push button. And your sodium hydroxide pumps are identical pretty much to this panel. Yeah, you'll see them out there. And here's your application points. As I said before, your DAF process to aid in sludge flotation and thickening, and north and south aeration tank effluent channel. And you're using the plant water as mixing water, motive water basically, and as, well, mixing, excuse me, mixing it because you're going to be activating it. And it's going to be used as a clarification aid in the final settling tanks. Polymer, again, flotation, thickening, clarification enhancement. It's a manic solution polymer, high molecular weight, very viscous, highly charged polymer, also called polyelectrolyte. It works by agglomerated destabilized particles through the charge patch or bridging mechanisms. I'll show you that. Particles sink or float and are removed from the system. So here you have initial absorption at the optimum polymer dosage. So you just got enough polymer for what you need to take care of the particle there, stabilize it. And then you're going to start getting some flock formation. These destabilized particles will now join together and you start getting flock particles starting to join up. Okay? And I think those of you that work with the sludge, you know what it looks like when it's flocking good, it's releasing water. You don't have excess polymer in there because you don't want to waste polymer. You just need enough to pull this off. You can also have the secondary absorption of polymer where you have this happen, it kind of wraps on itself, no contact with vacant sites or another particle, but you know, that'll happen as well. But here you can also have your excess polymer dosage, more polymer than you need, and you end up getting this where it's a stable particle without any vacant sites. You can also have a flock particle that through intense or prolonged agitation gets ruptured, and you end up getting flock fragments. So that's why once you have a good flock form, you don't want a lot of energy used for mixing or turbulence that could break up your flock in certain processes. All right. So that's just another thing that can happen is you destroy what you've created. And then you can have secondary absorption of polymer when you have a flock fragment, and it can get restabilized as a flock fragment that way. Any questions? We will go through the use of the polymer again through the use of the clarifier. We train on the clarifiers, the final settling tanks. And when I get into the biological treatment, I'm going to again address the use of the sodium hydroxide for the alkalinity pH optimization.
Good morning, I'm Susan Davidson from CDM, and we're going to go through the SCADA portion, the supervisory control and data acquisition. In case you ever wanted to know what SCADA stood for, supervisory control and data acquisition.
I like SCADA better.
Much easier to say
Sounds
SCADA.
expensive.
Yeah, that's what it. Does it work?
Yeah, where's my ammunition? So, the handout that we're using now actually says SCADA system on it, tells you that it's for the caustic and the polymer systems, and we're only going through the caustic system for the incinerator, the caustic for the aeration tanks, which isn't available yet, but will be later, will be a different class, probably along with the aeration tanks when we get to those. Now, the beginning portion of the handout is the same portion that we had all through phase one, which just tells you things like how the screens work and what colors mean what and how buttons work and how set points work and that type of thing. Would anyone here care to have a refresher on that? Because we can go through this really quickly. And if not, then we'll go ahead and continue on. And we're going to start at section 1.1H. which is the system screens with the annotations. And this will just give you a walkthrough of how to get to the new screens for the caustic system for the incinerator building and to the new screens for the polymer system. If you haven't been on the computer in a while, you'll note that the first screen is the main menu screen. It's an overview of the plant. Okay, so if you look at the main menu, I know it's a black and white copy, so it's kind of hard to see, but you should be able to remember at least a little bit about what your plant looks like, because you've all worked here forever. You know you have to log in order to actually change anything or see anything. You have to log in. The first screen that you're going to see is the main menu, and we're going to be working basically in the filter building, which is right now the incinerator building is what's highlighted, but the filter building is right next to that, just to the right. If you were to click on the filter building, you get to the next page, which is page 11, which is the filter building overview screen, and it shows you things like your belt filter presses, your polymer, your caustic, your mix tanks, your swing pumps, that type of thing. That's all shown here. If you're on this screen, you have a couple of different buttons, well, you have a couple of different shapes that say caustic. One says caustic tanks, one says caustic pumps. We're going to start with the caustic tanks. If you turn to page 12, we'll show you the caustic tanks. Now, as Georgine had already mentioned, we have 3 existing tanks that are being refurbed, and we have 1 brand new tank. On each of these tanks, you'll have level indication. You'll have temperature switches, you'll have high-low alarms, you'll have a medium alarm, you'll have a reorder alarm, that type of thing. That's going to be, these 4 tanks are going to be feeding your entire caustic system. There are 6 new caustic pumps for the aeration system that we're not going to get into, but they are fed by these same 4 tanks. We have 4 now, a total of 4 caustic pumps for the incinerator building. Currently we have 3, it's being upgraded to 4. If you are on the caustic tank screen, you'll have the ability to go from the caustic tanks to either the incinerator caustic pumps or the aeration tank caustic pumps. We're going to actually go through the alarm set points first. You will have high alarm, low alarm, low alarm, and reorder alarms for your tanks. Okay, and they're set by set points that usually only the senior operators can change based on their passwords. However, you can look at these screens, you won't be able to change them. And these will tell you when your levels get low and you need to make a phone call to the guy to come and deliver some more. This will tell you when the guy's filling up, when he's near the top of the tank, and prevent him from overflowing and that type of thing. So then on page 14, we have the actual scrubber caustic pump screens. And these will be slightly different than the ones that you're using now for the incinerator, because we are adding a 4th pump. Currently, the way you're set up for your caustic with the 3 pumps, you have pump 1 that goes to scrubber 1, pump 2 that goes to the recycle tank, and pump 3 that goes to scrubber 3. 1 and 3 currently we do not use, 2 we use all the time. We'll now have the ability to switch around your pumps. So you'll have pumps 1 and 2 will be able to go to scrubber 1 or to the recycle tank. Pumps 2 and 3 will be able to go to the recycle tank, scrubber 1, or scrubber 3. Pumps 3 and 4 will be able to go to the recycle tank or to scrubber 3. Okay, is that all clear? Everybody understands how that's going to work? In automatic mode, pumps 1 and 2 can only go to scrubber 1 or to the recycle tank. In automatic mode, scrubber 2 and 3 can only go to the recycle tank, or no, pumps 2 and 3 can only go to the recycle tank. Pump 2 can go to scrubber 1 in automatic. Pump 3 can go to scrubber 3 in automatic. Pump 4 goes to scrubber 3. Pump 4 can also go to the recycle tank. In manual mode, depending on how you valve this, if you just change around some of the valving, you can have pump 4 feed scrubber 1. But it only can happen in the manual mode. You won't have automatic control. You'll have to give it a set point for manual mode. Okay, any questions on that? It's a little confusing. On each of these screens, you get some information such as if the pump is in remote, if it's running or if it's stopped, what speed it's running at, that type of thing. If there's a drive fault, it'll tell you that as well on these screens. If you were to click on one of these pumps, we would go to page 15 and you'll have the caustic feed pump control screen show up. Now this one that we're looking at here happens to be for number 2, pump number 2. Each pump will have one control screen for itself. On that one you have to determine on the feed control portion where that pump is pumping to, whether it's pumping to scrubber 1 or to the Venturi. In the case of pump 2, in the case of pump 3, you're going to have the choice of pumping to scrubber 3 or the Venturi. When it says Venturi, it basically means recycle tank. Now, currently on the recycle tank, you have 2 modes of control. You have the ability to run it off of pH control from your pH. You have pH probes over there in your recycle tank. If you choose to, you can select just one pH probe that will run the system, or you can use both pH probes, take the average of the 2. Right now I think you have one pH probe that isn't working very well over there, so you're always using one pH probe to deal with keeping the pH on the recycle tank at the appropriate level. You also have the ability to run this by flow, meaning based on, you basically set a set point that says, I want 5 gallons per hour pumping in. And you put in 5 and the system takes care of speeding up the pump in order to maintain 5 gallons per hour. Though that's excessive because I think these pumps only do 0.5 gallons per hour. So, so you'll never make it otherwise. In the manual mode, you can just give the pump a set point from 0 to 100, just like most of your other pumps that you have. In manual mode, if you tell it 50%, that is actually going to affect the stroke of the pump. Now, the pump is always going to run at a constant speed, but the stroke will adjust to change the dosage. Now, I know Georgina earlier was talking about pH and alkalinity. Does everybody understand the difference between the two? pH is your measure of acidity of your water. 7 is neutral. The higher the number, above from 7 to 14 is basic. Below 7 is acidic. Okay? Pretty simple and straightforward. Alkalinity is the buffering of the water. The water's, I say water, but it's actually just whatever liquid you happen to be dealing with. It's the ability of the water to accept acid without changing the pH. Okay? For instance, if you have no alkalinity in your water and it's at 7 and you add a few drops of acid, your pH drops down. If you have alkalinity in your water and it's at 7 and it's neutral and you add a few drops of acid, it's not going to change its pH. Okay? Pretty simple and straightforward. On these pumps you have start-stop capability. Again, in manual mode. If you put it in automatic mode, you will have lead lag set up. It's not shown yet on these drawings, but it will be. You'll have to select, for instance, if you're having 2 different pumps go to your Venturi, you can have one set as the lead and one set as the lag, and as it needs to bring on the pumps to keep the alkalinity or to keep the pH up, it will turn them on and off as it needs to. On page 16, we have trend screens. Basically, this is just going to trend the tank levels, the pump speeds, the pump feedbacks, and perhaps the pH as well, just so you guys can see what effect the pumps are having on your pH. Then we move over to polymer. On page 17, we're looking at the polymer storage tanks. We have both feed and mixing pumps and tanks on this one screen. On your tanks, you're going to have the high-low alarm system that we have for the caustic. On your mixing pumps and your metering pumps, you have basic controls. These do not have automatic functionality. These are manual mode only. Okay, so basically you turn it on, you tell it what speed you want it to run, or you just turn it on. Again, all of the status for the pumps is shown here. It'll tell you if there's a fault, it'll tell you what speed it's running at, if it has a speed feedback. Your mixing pumps are all single speed. Your metering pumps, again, you're adjusting the stroke, the speed is going to be constant. You will also show if it's in local or remote. Obviously, if it's in local, we have no control through the computer. If it's in remote, that's when you can actually start pushing the buttons, starting on page 18. On the polymer feed pumps, you have start-stop controls, you have speed controls. It gives you the status of the handoff auto, the VFD, which is always going to show either enabled or disabled, and the run status, running or stopped. You also have alarms here that will show up if there's a problem. They are, I believe, fail to run and overload or fault, which are basically the same thing in this case. On the polymer mixing pumps, which is page 19, we only have start-stop controls. They're either running or they're not. Their handoff autos are either in local or remote, and they have fail to run or fault alarms as well. Now on page 20, we're going into, again, the tank level alarms. Now there's two polymer tanks. They are sharing their alarms. There's not individual alarms for each tank. It's one set of alarms that will be applied to both tanks. So we're showing the low level set point, the low low set point, the high and the high high. And again, that's for both tanks, because I believe these two tanks balance themselves out anyway, right? No? They are separate tanks?
Yeah.
Okay. Maybe we'll give you a second set of points then. Anyway, you guys are all familiar with how deadbands work on level alarms, right? So where it goes into alarm at, say, 10 feet, you have a deadband of 0.5 feet. If you get a high alarm at 10 feet, it will stay in high alarm until the level in the tank gets below 9.5 feet, if your deadband is 0.5. Pretty simple. Are there any other questions, anything that you guys want to know about this system? Would you like to see the screens in color? Because we're going down to the senior operator's room to take a peek. Something to keep in mind is while we're doing all these changes, we have the existing system, which we have the screens for, and we have the new system, which we also have the screens for, but we had to make it so that when you click on the system through the normal way of going, that you get the existing system, because that's what's running right now. So I'll show you how to get to these new screens so that when you're, sitting around at 3 o'clock in the morning with nothing to do, you can go and look at the brand new screens. Okay, first thing is the main menu, and from here to get to the new caustic system, we go through the filter building. You can see it gets highlighted. We click on that, and we now have the ability to go see the caustic tanks, the caustic pumps, or the polymer pumps. We'll start with the caustic tanks, and as you can see, we're not hooked up to any real-world information yet, but that will happen soon. These are your 3 existing tanks and your brand new tank. You also show your eye wash, and you show your containment sump on this screen. These 4 tanks will feed the entire 10 caustic pumps, but we're only going to deal today with the pumps that go to the incinerator building. Now on this screen you'll be able to get your level alarms. You'll see your actual levels in the tanks. You'll see temperature switch alarms, whether it's high or low, just so we can monitor the temperatures in the tanks. And from here you also have set points for each of your tanks, for a low, a high, high, and a deadband for each tank. And these are the points that will alarm on the screen right here where currently nothing is showing. If we go from here to the area to the scrubber sodium hydroxide pumps, you'll see the 4 new pumps that are going to be feeding into either the Venturi recycle tank or the 2 scrubbers, scrubber 1 or scrubber 3. Now the 4 pumps can go in many different modes. Currently we're going to talk about the automatic sequence, which you can bring up by clicking on the control screen here. We have start-stop control, we have manual automatic speeds, and we have to select where that pump is pumping to by using the scrubber or the Venturi. From here, they go out to the various injection points. In manual mode or in local mode, the valving can be switched around so that pump number 1 can feed scrubber number 3. However, in automatic mode, pumps 1 and 2 can go to scrubber 1 or the Venturi recycle. Pumps 2 and 3 can go to the Venturi recycle. Pump 2 can go to scrubber 1, pump 3 can go to scrubber 3, and pump 4 can go to scrubber 3 or the Venturi recycle tank. Pretty simple, straightforward. From here, we also have a trend screen that shows you the tank levels and the pump speeds, whichever pumps are running. So then from here, we're going back to the filter building, and we're going to bring up the new polymer screen. We have the 2 tanks, we have the 3 feed pumps and the 3 mixing pumps. The feed pumps are speed control, the mixing pumps are single speed. These pumps will be feeding the new aeration tank system, but you do have the existing polymer that feeds the DAF. Again, you have the set points for the tank levels so that you get high and low alarms if necessary. We'll have the information for the feed pumps, whether they're in local or remote, whether they're running or not, and what speed they're running at. If they have any alarms, those will show as well. That's pretty much the system right there.